morning. Another week begins. Can't believe we're on vlog 24. It's nuts, isn't it? But this morning it's quite early and I'm starting the week off right by starting some pickled onions. So making pickled onions is really easy, but you need to leave the little onions salting overnight. So I'm going to start them this morning and then I'll do the rest of the process tomorrow. The onions I'm using are these chaps. These gorgeous bright red boys. They're actually Red Baron, which is an onion that if you leave it in the ground long enough and you space them correctly, they will form, you know, proper big fat red onions. But I sowed these ones very close together specifically because I wanted them to be for pickling. And also, as I've said before, we do have a problem with Allium leaf miner on our site. And you never know which year it's going to be a real problem and which year they just don't seem to show up. Even though we cover them, sometimes it's just everything's riddled with it. And because of that, we also, along with our big fat leeks and trying to grow proper onions and that kind of thing, we do also grow quite a lot of sort of short-term alliums. So I've mentioned before a variety of leek called Nipper, which is a pencil leek, so very skinny and absolutely delicious. But it just means because it doesn't have to bulk up as much as the big leeks, if you're going to have a year where you're riddled with Allium leaf miner, they're actually not in the ground long enough for it to cause a problem. And that's the same with these guys. Although it doesn't look like we've got a problem this year, I direct sowed these chaps really quite thickly in the bed, and we've been eating them as we go. We've taken a couple kind of a spring onion size, and now I've just taken the rest of them out that have bulbed up. This is now about half the crop. There's another half left in there, so that's going to have spaced them out. So hopefully we'll get the rest of them as proper onions. But it's these chaps I'm focusing on today. So like I said, it's a salting process, so I'm just going to tidy them up and cover them in salt and then leave them till tomorrow. So that's these guys ready. They were a bit of a struggle to peel, but I figured I was doing so few it'd be alright. It was still a bit of a pain. But if you're doing any more than that, the easiest way to do it is just with their skins on and everything and roots still intact. You just put them in a large bowl, cover them with boiling water and just let them sit there until the water's gone cold. And then the skins come off really, really easily. But I figured I was doing so few it wouldn't be that much of a bother. I was a bit of a pest and my eyes have been streaming. Like, I only need to go near a leak and my eyes start watering. I wouldn't be very good in a riot, would I, if they sprayed tear gas at me? But, yeah, so the onions are looking gorgeous and I'm going to salt them now, so just throwing a bit of salt over. Next on my agenda for today is I'm going to sow a bit of pak choi, because when I did all the sowings last week, the pak choi seed hadn't actually arrived. We've got two varieties this time, a red one and a green one. So I'm going to sow them really quickly and then head off up to the allotment, because we got part way through turning the compost from bin 2 into bin 1 last week, and we're just going to finish that off. And I'll show you what the pak choi looks like that we've just started eating now, that I sowed in vlog, no idea when it was, but it was a while ago, but we're eating it now. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do this morning. I'll just salt these and get on with it. Right, we made it up to the allotment. Let me show you the pak choi. So they are growing in one of our brassica beds at the end, and they're looking pretty good. The biggest ones we've already eaten, so this is like the second wave of them, and they're coming along really, really nicely. You can see something's been nibbling the leaves, but they're absolutely fine. And then why is there always one like this? Always. So compost. I've transferred the frontage from this bin to the one next to it, and we're just turning it over. I promise I haven't been leaving Mum to do it all herself. I'm doing the filming at this bit. So at the moment it's really straggly and it's only sort of partly decomposed. It's got masses of worms in it, and just part of that turning process is to get the fresh stuff and the older stuff all mixed in together. And it's really, really worth doing if you're making compost. So this bin is the compost that we took out of that third bin that has actually rotted down. You can see it's really, really fine. It's excellent compost, this, actually, I have to say, even if it is full of tomato seeds. And then when you're turning the compost, you often find little gems like this. This is the breadboard that we lost last year.
Just look away.
Yeah, it's a really, really nice evening up here this evening, so we're having a drink up here instead of in the garden at home. It's lovely. Cheers. Cheers. Good morning. I'm going to finish off the pickled onions this morning. So these guys have been being salted overnight. They were just in that metal pot, and I have rinsed them off and let them dry on this bit of kitchen roll. And I have found myself a jar that they all fit into quite nicely, quite snug. The pickling liquor that I'm going to be using is a 50-50 split of malt vinegar, cider vinegar, with a teaspoon of yellow mustard seed and a couple of pink peppercorns in there. There's also some sugar, so for this I've got about 250 ml of pickling liquor with 40 g of caster sugar. So I'm just going to heat that up and bring it to the boil, and when it's hot, just pour it straight over the onions in the jar. Straight up to the top and let them just settle because they'll float around a bit. My jar has been sterilised because I'm going to be keeping these for a while, so it was in the oven beforehand. So the jar is quite warm, so pouring this liquid in isn't going to make it crack or anything, and then it is just literally lid on, nice and tight, and that is them done. Okay, well they won't be ready for an absolute minimum 10 days, 2 weeks, but I'm going to leave them probably a lot longer than that. It's pretty warm today, but it's quite overcast. My main job for today is the sweet corn's totally finished. We've eaten loads of it. The first wave we had weren't particularly good because they'd been caught by the netting that we had to try and protect them from the squirrels. And then the next wave, they were fine. We got some really, really good cobs. And then the really late ones that I planted just haven't matured. And they've gone over and they're just full of earwigs. So we've decided to give what's there to the chickens. And we're just going to take out the rest because we want to prepare the bed to get the field beans in. The field beans are the main green manure that we're going to be using this year. So even though it seems really, really woody, we just throw it all in the compost. The thing is that we sieve our compost and it all sort of comes out. I mean, most of this stuff has got a really pulpy centre and it rots down just fine, and then it leaves a bit of straggle. But because we sieve it, even with the really big sieve, you get rid of all of that kind of stuff. And then we tend to use what's left out of the compost and just dig it in anyway, or or if we're planting something that is going to be more permanent, we throw in the sort of rougher compost into the bottom of the hole, and it always seems to appreciate it. So even though these are really coarse, we just throw them in anyway. They don't make good canes, so things like raspberry canes we wouldn't put in the compost. We use them for pea canes and that kind of stuff. But these sweet corn canes are really pulpy in the centre and they just collapse, so there's no point. Also going to pick a couple of turnips before we head off this evening. They're looking really, really good. They're looking great this year, actually. These are snowball. This was all done sort of 3 in a cell, and it's worked an absolute treat.
They're good size, aren't they?
Really good.
Huge, actually.
Morning. What I'm going to be doing today is clearing out quite a lot of what's in the greenhouse. This year we grew the cucumbers, the melons, the aubergines and the sweet potato in there. Sweet potato is still going strong, as are the aubergines, but the cucumbers, all of the varieties, and also the melons are over. We've eaten them all. So really now they're just taking up space, and I'm going to clear them out. I'm just going to chop them off at the bottom and then retain what's in the pots and just bag that up, because we'll use that as bulk when we go to top up the beds that are inside the polytunnel. The beds in the polytunnel we put in just at the height of when the pandemic had kind of shut everything down, and so we were really limited on how much compost we could get hold of. So for this first season in there, we've actually only had the beds like half full, and next year we're going to fill them up. They'll probably stay at that height over the winter, or we might just put a bit more in, but generally we've got to top them up ready for next spring. But all the pots that we've been growing in the greenhouse, all of that compost is totally viable, because we feed so consistently in the polytunnel that it's just a medium, you know, to carry the feed. So the soil will be absolutely perfect. It's only had one season growing in there anyway, and so we're going to use it for that, which means I'm going to cut all the tops off what's growing in there, clean up the sides. I've got all of that netting all the way up the side of the greenhouse, which I'll take all of that off and clear it all up really, which will leave me at the end with just the aubergines and the sweet potato in there. And then that gives us plenty space for when I eventually manage to dig the chilies out of the polyhouse and get them into pots in the greenhouse. So that's the scheme today. It's not too hot, but it's pretty warm in there. I could have chosen a cooler day, but I haven't, so that's what I'm going to do now. Right, so things are starting to look a little bit sad in here now, but they really have just been so good. These are the melons. They've gone right over, but I can't tell you, we just had such a great year for them. They produced masses of melons, and we've been eating them basically all the second half of the summer. This is the sweet potato. I'm going to leave that alone. He's going to stay in here for a while longer. And These, so we've got one crystal lemon up here that I'll pick off when I'm clearing. The cucumbers really suffered with red spider mite this year, really suffered with it. We still got masses of cucumbers though, to be fair, but the plants themselves looked really straggly from, you know, a couple of months in. These have been a really good success this year. This is the orange aubergine tiger. And these are the other aubergines. Again, really suffered with spider mite, but they're all coming good now. We started spraying quite a lot in here, so they really don't like moisture, the red spider mite. He's got a lovely pattern on him. We've got quite a few coming. We've got about 6 or 7 on here. There's another few over here, and they're still flowering away. You can eat aubergines when they're really small, so I'll just hand pollinate the rest of these flowers, and hopefully we'll just have small aubergines later on. But this is my main focus. I'm clearing these guys out today. So I've got rid of most of the top growth now. I'm going to just take down this screen that I put up for, sorry the wind's blowing. You're outside the greenhouse, I'm in, so you're getting the weather, I'm afraid. But I'm going to take all of this down and save my little clips, and I'm also going to take all this string down from on the top. I don't know if you remember when I was first stringing these up, but these little chaps have been brilliant this year. They've worked perfectly for the melons, as you've seen, and for the cucumbers, and they've been really holding it in tight. Like, we've had no falling out or anything. I'll stick a link actually underneath, because I know when I was putting them up I couldn't find where I'd got them from, and I found a link to them on Amazon, so I will put that in the notes underneath in case you're interested. Sorry, I hit you. I've got to stop doing that. Like always at the end of the summer, the greenhouse is in real need of a good wash down inside and out. These pots are full of what's basically perfectly good compost. People do say, you know, you shouldn't reuse compost because it's spent and everything, which is true. If you weren't going to be feeding your plants, you really wouldn't want to, but it's going to be perfectly good in the polytunnel because we're just using it as bulk, and it's going to be mixed in with a lot of other stuff. And to be honest, there's a lot of compost here. It would be ridiculous to waste it. But look at this. This is a kiwi. We're never going to get kiwis from it because you need 2 kiwi plants, but we've just got it in here because it's gorgeous. Look at the back of that leaf. Beautiful. So lesson learnt this year, chaps, was I don't want to grow short carrots. The varieties like, I think it's Globe is the little round one, and is it Chantenay, the short one. It's really useful if you're growing them in containers or you don't have great soil depth or anything, but we're absolutely fine, and I just don't see the point of it. He's a big one. The Touchon is a beautiful carrot, but we sowed loads of different varieties this year, and I'm going to go back to just Touchon next year. The red ones we grew Cosmic Purple. They don't grow as strong as Touchon, for example, and not only that, the colour comes off when you're cooking them and makes all the water look like grey sludge, and they don't keep their colour when you're cooking them, so I don't really see the point, to be honest. You can see these carrots are pretty hairy, like they've got a lot of root going on around them. That's because we haven't been watering them enough. So they've been desperately searching for more moisture. And like always, as soon as we've done anything with the carrots, the little carrot root fly house goes back on in a desperate attempt. Actually, I say desperate attempt. This year so far, touch wood, we haven't had any carrot root fly. Shh. And the badgers haven't nicked them either. It's a miracle. Good morning. Again, I'm recording this last little bit on the morning of Tuesday that is coming out. Cutting it fine, aren't I, really? I'm not one of these people who can get the video recorded a week in advance and then get it out. No, it is this morning, and coming out this afternoon. But I wanted to do a bit today because it being Tuesday, it is actually the autumn equinox today. So basically this is the end of the summer. Can't believe it. So unfortunately no wine again in the final segment, but I do have a good cup of coffee, which helps. So yeah, all change next week. It's going to actually be autumn. I'm going to really push to get quite a lot of the big jobs done this autumn. We've got bed extensions to do, and we've got to do a lot of planning of the herb garden. I've been taking note. When I asked you about herb recommendations, I had some real crackers which I've been trying to source and asking people for cuttings. So I'm kind of amassing all of that stuff at the moment, and that's where we're going to be. And to be fair, quite a lot of the jobs I was doing this week were pretty autumnal, weren't they? Like taking out the sweet corn and clearing the greenhouse. But I thought I'd give you a bit of an update on the seeds that are coming in to winter. So the first lot of chard that I sowed, I don't know if you remember I'd shown you that they'd got really attacked by green fly when they'd only just germinated. Well, some of them haven't quite recovered. Can you see, like these chaps just in here, they were damaged and they just haven't kind of got to grips. But the rest of them, I mean, we've got some good boys in there. They're going to go in the outside bed that I'm just waiting for the green manure, the phacelia, to come up, and then we'll chop that down. But it's growing incredibly fast. I mean, I suppose that's because of the hot weather, isn't it? These ones that I sowed last week, so that's these chaps, they've all come up really nicely. They will probably be our early spring, really early spring picking. Also, the first wave of spring onions, which were the white Lisbon that I sowed, they are coming up good. Another week or so and I'll be able to put them into the polytunnel. So yeah, we're really in sort of bed clearance mode at the moment. We've got the sweet corn out, obviously. There's bits and pieces still hanging around. We've got a while to go for the courgettes. We'll see how they go with the change in weather. And we want to start getting the field beans planted in the first week of October, so we want everything really cleared by then. I'll put the link underneath to the bit that I wrote on my blog about why we're using field beans this year, or why we're using green manure this year, and also where I got them from. I'll put that link under as well. Also on the going over, I suspect I will be taking the tomatoes out next week, probably. The ones, you know, when I cleared most of the foliage off, most of those tomatoes have now ripened. There's just like a handful left on there, so I'm going to take them off probably next week. Just chop them straight down at the bottom. Like I say, I'm not going to disturb the soil. And that just leaves the chilies, and the chilies are going great guns, so we'll see how long they last. Like I said, last year I was still picking the lemon drop chilies in November, so I don't know what we'll be doing about that. They're in the wrong place, Jessie. Never mind. But we are going to try and overwinter them. Like I said, the green jalapeno that we've had this year, we overwintered from last year, and it was really successful. Got going really quick, even though it looked incredibly unpromising. It was just like a stick in a pot for most of the winter. We're going to try and do that with the rest of what we've got in there. Talking of chilies and tomatoes, I'm going quite well with saving the seed. I'm thinking about, because next week is going to be the 25th vlog episode. It's bizarre, but it's going to be number 25, so and it'll be the first proper autumn one. So I'm going to try and do a competition. I've never done a competition before. I've never done a competition on Instagram or anywhere. So I'm going to do a competition to win all of my tomato and chili seeds from this year for you to do next year. That's what I'm thinking of doing anyway. If you think it's a good idea, let me know. Maybe if it's not. Because I recently won some Turkish pepper seeds, which I'm pretty excited about. I won them on an Instagram competition and I was pretty excited about it. So I thought, well, I could do that with my huge selection of tomatoes and chilies that I grew this year. So that was where my thinking was coming from. And I thought, well, for the 25th episode, it might be a good one. That's about it for today, I think. I mean, it's about it for today for you. It's not it today for me. I'm going to be racing upstairs with my phone and transferring my footage to try and splice this bit onto the end. And that should be, hopefully, we'll be up by this afternoon. So no, I'm going to say, oh, stop just going on, Jessie. I am going to say happy equinox. I'm sorry I don't have a glass of wine to cheers it to, but the coffee's good. And here's to going into the new season. It's going to be autumn, lots to do. And also drop me a line below. I really love getting your comments. It makes it feel really real that actually somebody is watching this and I'm not just talking to the ether. Also, in the meantime, come and find me on Instagram and or the blog. I'll put a link to everything that's relevant underneath. And with that, I'll say happy equinox. Here's to autumn, and I will see you this time next week.